It gives me great pleasure and a huge honour to introduce the one and only Mr. Colin Baker.
You're not that great by yourself,
I'm a nobody.
We'll become a somebody, tell me.
I'm actually Gregory.
There you are.
So, you've had the most incredible life and career.
How do you know?
I've researched you.
Never met you before, do you? Go on then.
So you've battled aliens in the far future, you've faced spiders in the Australian jungles, and you've tread across many theatrical boards, performing everything from Shakespeare to Panto.
Yes.
Yeah. And travelling through time ourselves now. The beginning of your acting roots is very interesting, because you didn't go to drama school until much later, because you spent 5 years in a solicitor's office.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did the spark of you wanting to become an actor? Because you've always had a great love and command of the English language. Was that where it began?
The English language thing began, as it often does, with one teacher. I have one teacher, and I met him years later, and it turned out he only taught me for 2 years. But I remember him for out of my 6 years at grammar school. He was the man that I idolised. He was sarcastic, he was overbearing, and he used the English language wonderfully. And I wanted to be him. He was so clever with words. And it was a joy to meet him years later, going to see a play I was in. And I met up with him again. And he taught me sarcasm, which isn't necessarily a good thing. But he made me love the English language. And the theatre thing came because I went with my mother when I was 17 to see an amateur production of The King and I at the Palace Theatre in Manchester. And I watched that, and the fact that it was amateur said anyone can do it. You don't have to be an actor, which I had no dream I ever could be. You can just go and do it for fun. And I said to my mother at the end of the show, I'd love to do that. And the man sitting in front of me heard it. And he turned round and he said, young man, I am the president of the North Manchester Amateur Operatic and Dramatic Society, which is the company that's been doing the show. Come along next Friday night to the Simpson Memorial Hall in Moston, Manchester. We'd love having new young men come. I was there the following Friday night, doing plays as well, and I started doing everything I could in everything, and adored it. Now, the chance of that happening, of that man sitting in front of me, hearing me say that, when people say, what advice can you give me in this profession that I'm in, I say, be lucky. Because luck has played so many parts in my life, in acting certainly.
You've said this industry is 90% luck, 10% talent. Have you found that to be the case?
I think it's a bit more than that. I think if you ain't got talent, well,
but you need that.
Well, actually, I do know some very successful people who, thank you very much. Give me a round of applause for my I know an awful lot of people who've been very successful whilst displaying what I would call minimal talent. But there you go, that's life, and that happens when you have things like Love Island and all those. And they kind of learn on their job how to do something, certainly. And they have good looks on their side. But, yeah, luck is important. I think talent is more than 10%. But, yeah, I think it's 60% luck.
60%.
Because I know an awful lot of very, very clever, talented, wonderful actors who never get a break. And that's the nature of our profession, in which, before COVID, 80% were out of work at any time. It's probably more than that now. So it's a tough profession, and anyone who thinks that they're successful purely because of their own talent is self-delusional. Because the luck, I mean, I can tell you later where the luck steps in, but each of my little steps up the performing ladder have been attributed entirely to luck. And I was able to do it when the opportunity was given me, hopefully. But that's certainly the case. And I joined the that amateur group. I then found out there were other amateur groups, because my parents weren't, my father certainly wasn't, my mother was only slightly interested in entertainment. And I found that all over Manchester, the north is a hotbed of amateur drama. So I joined everything, and I worked out you could rehearse at this place on Monday, this place on Tuesday, and the performances were then, so it didn't clash with that.
You did everything?
I did everything I could, and adored it while I was studying law, which is why I failed my exams the first time, and luckily I got through the second time. But and then when I was a couple of years older, my father, who was 49, had a heart attack, followed by a stroke, and he spent his next few years, not a vegetable exactly, but not really functioning. And I thought, in the words of the song, is that all there is? Because, you know, he worked himself to the bone for us, and he ended up, as he did, in a mental hospital, which was awfully sad. And I thought, I never wanted to do law. He made me. And I walked away from it. And I auditioned for drama schools and got into LAMDA at the age of 23, having done 5 years of law. Learned there that I wasn't as good an actor as I thought I was, because that's what they told me.
They were wrong.
Well, thank you. Two of them, we filed up at the end of the 3 years into the then principal's office. And to me, he said, you clearly care about it, you work hard, but I think you'll have to face the fact that you won't get much employment until you're middle-aged. Have you thought of becoming a stage manager? And I said, no, I haven't. So I went out depressed and waited for the bloke who went in after me to come out and say that he'd been told exactly a similar thing. His name was David Suchet. So we two, out of my year, there are a couple others still working, but we're the only two who've kind of progressed so that you might say, you know, you've done well. Please, Sir David Suchet, isn't he now?
Yes,
David,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
I'm not.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yes.
that aside, so I left somewhat tail between the legs, I think. Got a job straight away, auditioned for it. It was at a time when actors who could speak the Queen's English was out of fashion a bit, and you had to be northern or, you know, spiky or difficult or swear a lot. And there was a play called Plaintiff in a Pretty Hat, which was by Hugh and Margaret Williams, which is about, it's a drawing room comedy. And I went in and read, and they said, yeah, you got the part. So I went straight out on tour with Jill Brown, who was the star of Emergency Ward 10 at the time. On the first day of rehearsal, gave me a shopping list and asked me if I was playing the juvenile lead, and she sent me out to do her shopping. I thought that's what you had to do if you were a young actor. I did it for her. Amazing. I've never tried that on myself with another young actor, and I think I get short shrift if I did. And I did that, and then that finished, and I was offered an audition by a lovely casting director called Colin Rodriguez at the Mermaid Theatre, who'd seen me in a play at LAMDA and got me to audition for another of those kind of plays, with Fenella Fielding in it, if anyone remembers her. And I auditioned for Bernard Miles, Sir Bernard Miles, who ran the Mermaid Theatre then. And I went into this room, and he was sitting with his assistant director. And as I walked towards them, he said, oh no, wrong, far too good looking. Which is kind of a insult combined with a compliment, which is difficult to deal with. And don't you think so, he said. He turned around to his assistant. And the assistant, a man called Stephen Parry, who in later years became my closest friend, and I was his best man when he got married. Stephen said, no, I don't think he's that good looking. And Bernard Miles said, no, he's too good looking for the part. And I said, with remarkable bravery for a new actor, I said, would you like to go outside while you discuss the relative merits of my face? I was a bit irritated. Yeah, yes, good idea. And I went outside. Time passed. I knocked at the door, opened it, nobody in there. I started wandering around the Mermaid Theatre, found Colin Rodriguez, the casting director, who said, oh yes, he was called away. He wants to hear you read. He was in the box office on the telephone. I did a reading for Bernard Miles in the box office while the woman was selling tickets to the show that night.
Get a free performance, I said.
And I read for him and he said, yes, yes, you'll do. I'll send you to my dentist. He can chip your teeth. I thought, I don't want my teeth chipped. Anyway, I got the part. And it started about a month, 2 months later. And on the first day, I said to Bernard, who was directing, I said, this business about the dentist. He said, oh, you've only just started work and you want a day off to go to the dentist? I said, no, you mentioned the dentist. Oh, he wants to go to the... I don't want to go to the dentist. And he turned around and said, I'm going to send you to the BBC library to listen to people stammer. I want you to stammer in this part. I said, all right. And in rehearsal, I started a bit of stammering. And then I said to Bernard at the end of the first week, about this trip to the BBC. Oh, got another job, have you? I said, no, you said stammer. You don't want to stammer. You want to hear what you're saying. Then I realised what I was dealing with. So I ignored all the other suggestions that I might stand on my head with no trousers on, or whatever it was. And then he was extremely rude to Fenella Fielding, who was playing the person I had most of the scenes with, and she walked out, resigned from the part, with only a week and a half to go.
Blimey.
And then another actress turned up, who had been primed in advance, and quite clearly what had happened was he wanted to sell tickets in Fenella Fielding's name, and then get rid of them for someone cheaper. I mean, it was, God, talk about baptism of fire. So the play went ahead. The only other incident that happened was one day we were out, there was a balcony at the back, we were outside, it was foggy, and I would substitute the words used for other words that are less offensive. But Bernard Miles said, look at this beautiful London we live in, the mist and the fog, and there was a shape of a ship going past, and he shouted, because he was a great Shakespearean actor, oh, noble bargee, where are you taking your charge of oriental spicy, he did a long speech, probably one from something he'd been in, and a voice from the mist came back, I'll paraphrase, go away. We got very angry and went back to rehearsal. That was the beginning of my career.
That's incredible. So, do you find it, because you didn't just want to be an actor, you needed to be an actor, do you find it like an...
That is precisely what I say to people. Wanting to be an actor, yeah, okay, you want to be an actor, but I needed to.
Yeah,
it was
your call.
I discovered who I was and what and funny enough, during all this COVID lark, we've got into a kind of habit of not doing anything much. And I did a bit of acting. I did a day on Emmerdale Farm a few weeks ago. And it was like someone lit a fire again inside me. I kind of knew who I was again, and it woke me out of whatever torpor I was in at the time. And I'm knocking on now, I'm 78, no secret of it, but I want to do more.
Yeah.
I still want to do more. And actors don't retire really, because their retirement is dotted about throughout their career.
Yeah.
Most people work solidly for 40 years and then have a couple of years before they die, or longer if they're lucky. But as an actor, you never work 52 weeks a year, or with a holiday 48 weeks a year. You're lucky if you do 26. I've been luckier than most. I've done 30 or maybe 40 some years. But all that time off came when my children were young, so I was able to spend more time with them than most 9-to-5 dads were ever able to do. And it does mean that when other people would have stopped doing their job 13 years ago, I can still carry on doing it.
Yeah.
And after retirement age, I get parts like Inspector Morse on stage, which I did a few years ago, which, you know, I'm so grateful for. I've been very lucky.
Do you find it like it's an intoxicating catharsis for you, transforming into someone else?
I honestly don't know. I'm more of the... There are many kinds of actor, but there are two extremes, if you like. There's the one who is playing my left foot, whatever his name, what's his name?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis, who spent the entire time he was filming that, hobbling and unable to talk properly, and even when he was in the pub afterwards, he'd be in the role. I'm not that kind of actor. Or there's the actor I do adore, sadly deceased, Paul Schofield. Now, I have friends who are in the Scottish play with Paul Schofield in Stratford some years ago, and an actor who was a great friend of mine called Donald Burton, who was in War and Peace when I did it in the 70s. He was in the company and he was a bit of a practical joker. And there was a goblet that was passed around when Banquo's Ghost appeared. And he put a goldfish in there. So as it went to each thane, they looked at the goldfish and started laughing and covered themselves up. And it came to Paul Schofield, who was playing the titular role, who stood there looking at this, and like that. And he looked at all the actors on the stage, and he went, "Oh no!" Pulled imaginary bits of goldfish out of his mouth, the bones. He hadn't drunk it at all. But a lot of them left the stage, they were laughing so much. But he was still brilliantly moving. So he entertained the troops whilst performing for the audience. And that's what I like to do. Acting can be surrendering to some inner demons and being very effective, or it can be, I'm driving this bus, I'm in charge, I've rehearsed, I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm delivering. And I'm feeling it, but I'm in charge of the feeling it.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to be. I don't want to be an actor who, as the curtain comes up, is sobbing because they've been so wonderful. You know what I mean? It's a craft, not a therapy.
Where's the wisdom there? Now,
For me. I mean, dear David Suchet, who left drama school the same time as I did, and until he met an actor called Ron Lacey, who came to direct a show we were in, and taught David all sorts of things about how to use your hands and your feet, and he was a very physical actor. And David transformed, you can see that in Poirot. But David now, apparently on set, is Poirot all the time.
is it?
At lunch, he is Poirot, he will talk to you legs out. I'd like to think I wouldn't lose my accent if I had lunch and spoke like this to friends. But he's moved into that territory. Okay, if it works for you, don't work for me. I find that irritating.
Yeah, it's strange method acting. It works for some, but not for...
Yeah.
Now, as it's a Doctor Who event, I have to talk about Doctor Who.
Oh, Doctor Who! They don't care. You don't talk about Doctor Who, do you? Okay, off you go.
Now, because you were a fan right from the beginning, you watched the very first episode. Did you go to bed that night and dream that one day you would become William Hartnell?
Oh, no. No, I was at the College of Law in Lancaster Gate in London. I had a flat at number 2 Lancaster Gate, basement flat. You went to the front door, you went into another door, and there was 2 staircases going down into the great big living room. The telly was in the corner. And I came in and took my coat off, hung it over the banister, and the opening credits came up. So I leaned on the banister like that and started watching it. And I was still there 25 minutes later when it finished. And all of us in that room, 3 other blokes, all went, wow. Now, you may find it hard to believe, given what television can do now, that that would ever have any kind of, excuse me, any kind of lasting effect. Shaky sets, all that nonsense, black and white. But that was state-of-the-art television. You know, things like Quatermass.
Yeah.
That was, wow, that was knockout television. Our palates are now somewhat more sophisticated and expectant, but back then, that was remarkable. Now, if you said to me then, one day, that will be you, I'd have thought you were clinically insane. But I always, being an actor, working actor, you're not often free on a Saturday evening, and of course there was no opportunity to record anything. But I always made a point of watching Doctor Who when I was there with the television. And fan, would I have gone to a convention? Possibly not. But I liked it, and I enjoyed watching it. And it was the kind of television that appealed to me in my 20s, as it still does to young men in their 20s, I believe, and young ladies. So yeah, I was a fan in that sense. I certainly wouldn't have wanted to dress up as Patrick Troughton or look up at somebody's kilt or anything. I wasn't kind of that moved by it, but I liked it. And certainly when the opportunity to be in it came along, I remember, because my agent rang me up and said, "You've been offered 3 episodes of Doctor Who with Peter Davison. And the dates are these, and they fit in perfectly between your 2 other things that you're booked for." And I said, "Oh dear, that means I'll never be the Doctor." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I read somewhere that they always cast the actor who plays the Doctor from somebody who hasn't been in the show before." And my agent said to me, "Well, they're not going to cast you as Doctor Who, are they?" No, I believed him. I said, "No, clearly not. Yes, of course I'll play Maxil in Arkham Infinity." And I turned up and played Maxil in Arkham Infinity, and I got on extremely well with John Nathan Turner. Now, normally producers come and watch run-throughs, and they're kind of anonymous suited figures. John Nathan Turner was not like that. He was very hands-on, very friendly, very loud, if you like, in many ways, dress, style. And because we used to rehearse for a week, and then you'd have a run-through in story order, not in recording order, which is usually different. Run-through in story order to show the cameraman and the producer. And at the end of the run-through, JNT came across to me and said, "Hello, Colin, how? What's this show called?" I said, "Doesn't he know?" "Doctor Who." "Oh, it's not called Maxil then?" I said, "I'm not sure what you're saying." He said, "Well, you're playing it as if you're the most important person on the set." I said, "Well, Maxil is in his own eyes."
Yes.
I don't think Colin is the most important, but when Maxil's around with these idiots, this stupid doctor, I said, "Could you leave a little space for Peter?" And then he laughed, and I said, "Well, yes, if you like." And we kind of continued on that relationship. And by chance, this is where chance comes into it. The AFM assistant floor manager on that was a lovely girl who was getting married.
It was a wedding, wasn't it?
Yeah. A few weeks later, and she invited me to the wedding. And I went, and JNT was there. And it was one of those days, I've never had another one in my life like it, where I was kind of witty and amusing. My wife said she didn't recognise me. I've never known you be funny before, she said. And apparently John says he went away from that wedding saying, "God, I didn't know Peter was leaving." He found his new Doctor.
Do you think it was your performance as Maxwell that planted the seed inside of it, that you saw a Doctor within you?
I can't guarantee that, but hopefully. But the idea that it broke the tradition of not casting it from someone who's been in the show, and that I did it is kind of heady, really. It's rather nice. I mean, I'm not being falsely modest here, but I've never been a very confident person. But that sequence of events made me less not confident. So when I turned up to do the first recording, I was less nervous than I'd ever been for anything I'd ever done before, because I knew I'd do a screening test. John just offered it to me, and that's so empowering. And I kind of went, yeah, I'm doing the Doctor. And I was much more nervous doing one episode with 2 scenes in it in Emmerdale a few weeks ago, because, you know, they notice if you get things wrong. If you're in every scene, you're entitled to get the odd bit wrong, aren't you? You know, but you're not if you're a guest artiste. So yeah, I talk a lot, don't I?
with Maxwell, there's a theme in your career playing baddies. So there's Paul Merrill,
Yeah.
King Rat in Dick Whittington, Babe and the Butcher. Do you enjoy playing people who are complete opposites to you? Because you are the nicest man on the planet.
Well, you're very kind. No, there are other nice, I can't think of any of them. It started from that very first telly I did, which sadly for some reason is not available on DVD. It was a 13-episode adaptation of Roads to Freedom, a trilogy by the French bloke. I've forgotten. Who? Jean-Paul Sartre. Thank you very much. The genius on the front row, whoever that was. Jean-Paul Sartre trilogy. And I played the part. Now, see, this is luck again. I went to meet the producer, a man called John Conroy. I went to meet him, and he asked me to read for this part, and it was a rapist, an unpleasant character. And I said, oh dear, I'm much more interested in the nice character, his friend, you know. So, he was counter-suggestive, I discovered later. If you told him, if you argued with him about his idea, he would become very obsessed that his idea was right. And he said, no, I think you should do it. I said, I'm not sure I want to. No, you should do it. I want you to do it. And he became a friend later as well. And he produced One Piece, which I was in later. So I ended up turning up in a rehearsal room in Acton in London to play, I can't remember his name. Anyway, they said, okay, we'll do the rape scene. And suddenly all these actors that had been reading their newspapers around the room, Georgia Brown, Daniel Massey, Rosemary, not Clooney, Rosemary, very good actress.
Leach.
Leach. Who?
Leach.
I'm deaf.
Leach.
Yes,
Rosemary Leach.
Rosemary Leach. There's always somebody who rescues me, thank you so much. They all stopped and started watching. And at that moment, I thought, I've never actually thought about this before, but maybe this is not the way most people do this. And the embarrassment was horrendous. Get through that and get through anything. And a lovely assistant floor manager called Graham Harper. He was at the beginning of his career, and he had to lie under the bed because there was an aerial shot of this bed with this awful person on it and somebody else. And he had to stick his finger under the mattress and prod me when I was supposed to do certain things. And that was my first ever television. So from then on it got easy. And then when he was casting War and Peace, David Conroy got me to play, I wasn't quite as bad, I was a vile seducer, not a rapist. And he got me to play Anatole in War and Peace, which was a lovely part.
With Anthony Hopkins as well, isn't it?
With Anthony Hopkins, who chucked me around the room, bless him. We became a friend for a while. Whether he'd know me now or not, I don't know. And that was a lovely part. And I went from that playing unpleasant characters. And that led to Paul Merrill in The Brothers, who wasn't criminal, It was unpleasant.